They say success is the best revenge. I disagree. Destruction is better, especially when you watch it happen in slow motion. My name is Elena. I am 34 years old. And 48 hours ago, I sat in the front row of a charity gala and watched my ex-husband's life disintegrate. He didn't scream. He didn't fight. He just stared at me across the room, realizing that the boring accountant he left behind had been counting his sins instead of numbers. But before we get to the ruin, you need to understand the perfection, or rather, the illusion of it. Let's rewind 9 months. It was our 8th wedding anniversary, 8 years. That number used to mean something to me. Infinity, forever. Now it just looks like a pair of handcuffs. I had reserved a table at Le Bernardin 3 months in advance. I wore the red dress Marcus used to love, the one he said made me look like a movie star. I ordered the Wagyu beef, medium rare, just the way he liked it. $200 an ounce. I sat there, and sat there. The candle on the table burned down from a tall pillar to a puddle of wax. The waiter stopped asking if I wanted more water. He just looked at me with that specific kind of pity reserved for women sitting alone in romantic restaurants. At 10:30 p.m., my phone finally buzzed. No apology. No, I'm stuck in traffic. Just a text. Don't wait up. Something came up at work. Big client. A big client. I looked at the cooling Wagyu beef. I took a sip of the vintage wine I couldn't afford but ordered anyway. And for the first time in 8 years, I didn't believe him. Call it intuition. Call it a gut feeling. But I knew the client wasn't a company. It was a person. And she probably didn't smell like office toner and stale coffee. I drove home in silence. The house was dark. I didn't scream when he walked in at 2 a.m., smelling like vanilla perfume and expensive gin. I was sitting on the couch, waiting. Elena, he sighed, loosening his tie. He didn't even look guilty. He looked annoyed, like I was an appliance that hadn't turned off properly. Why are you still awake? I told you, work was crazy. Happy anniversary, Marcus, I said. My voice was steady, too steady. He froze. Then, he did something that broke my heart more than the lateness. He rolled his eyes. God, was that today? Elena, come on. We're adults. Do we really need to celebrate every single milestone? It's just a date. Just a date, I repeated. 8 years is just a date. He walked to the fridge, grabbed a water, and then turned to me. The mask dropped. The charming, loving husband I married vanished. In his place stood a stranger with cold, dead eyes. Look, since we're doing this, he said, leaning against the counter, I'm leaving. The air left the room. What? I'm leaving, Elena. I'm done. He gestured vaguely at me, at our home, at our life. This isn't enough for me anymore. You're not enough. He didn't just stab me. He twisted the knife. He told me about her. Sienna. She's 24, Marcus said, a cruel pride in his voice. She's not just some girl, Elena. She's a Whitmore. Old money. Her father owns half the real estate in Manhattan. She understands ambition. She understands status. He looked at me with pure disgust. You're an accountant, Elena. You're safe. You're practical. You're stagnant. I need someone who matches my future, not my past. He packed his bags that night. He didn't take much, just his designer suits and his watches. He acted like he was upgrading his life, leaving the old baggage behind. Keep the house, he said magnanimously as he walked out the door. You'll need somewhere to cry. I didn't cry, not yet. I waited until the taillights of his Porsche disappeared down the street. Then I went to our home office. I'm an accountant. We deal in facts. We deal in numbers. When things don't add up, we find out why. I logged into our joint savings account, the one we had been building for a down payment on a vacation home, the one that held my inheritance from my grandmother. 0. Balance, $0. I blinked. I refreshed the page. Still 0. I checked the transaction history. A wire transfer, initiated yesterday. Destination, an account in the Cayman Islands. He hadn't just left me. He had robbed me. He took everything. My savings, my security, my dignity. He used my money to start his new life with his billionaire heiress. That was the moment the sadness died. I sat in that cold, dark office, staring at the blue light of the monitor. Marcus thought he was smart. He thought because he was a sales director, and I was just a boring accountant, he could outmaneuver me. But he forgot one crucial thing. Salesmen sell dreams. Accountants check the receipts. And Marcus? He had left a paper trail a mile long. I didn't call a lawyer immediately. I didn't call the police. Instead, I poured myself a glass of wine and opened my laptop. If he wanted to play games with money, I would play. First, I needed to know who this Sienna Whitmore really was. A Whitmore, Manhattan real estate royalty. I searched her name. Instagram profiles popped up immediately at Sienna_W_life. 500,000 followers, photos of her on yachts, photos of her in Paris, photos of her holding hands with Marcus, captions like, "Finally found my king," and "Upgrade season." She was beautiful. Flawless skin, impossible curves, blinding white teeth. She looked like a doll manufactured in a factory for billionaires. But something bugged me. I zoomed in on a photo from 3 years ago. She was tagged in a small town in Ohio. I'm a researcher at heart. I dug deeper. I scrolled back before the yachts, back before the designer bags. I found an old Facebook account, not under Sienna Whitmore, but under Sarah Jenkins. And there she was. That's Sarah Jenkins from Dayton, Ohio. No billionaire father, no real estate empire. Just a girl standing in front of a trailer park, wearing a Walmart uniform. And her teeth? They weren't perfect veneers back then. She had a distinct gap between her front teeth, a cute gap actually, but definitely not Whitmore genetics. I sat back in my chair. A cold smile touched my lips for the first time in 24 hours. Marcus left me for a billionaire heiress, who was actually a broke girl from Ohio with a lot of credit card debt and a good plastic surgeon. He didn't check her background. He saw the flash, the glitter, the fake last name, and he bought the lie hook, line, and sinker. But that wasn't enough. Knowing she was a fraud was just the appetizer. I needed the main course. I needed to know where my money went. And more importantly, I needed to know where his money came from, because a sales director's salary doesn't pay for Porsches and diamond necklaces for fake heiresses. I logged into his old work email. He never changed the password. Password 123. Typical Marcus, arrogant enough to think no one would dare check. What I found in his sent folder wasn't just infidelity, it was a felony. Most women in my position would have screamed. They would have printed out the emails, driven to the mistress's apartment, and caused a scene that would end up on TikTok. I almost did. My finger hovered over the print button. But then, the accountant in me took over. If I exposed Marcus now, while we were still legally married, his debt would be my debt. His tax fraud would be my nightmare. The IRS doesn't care who cheated on whom. They only care whose name is on the joint return. I realized I had to do something much harder than screaming. I had to play the victim. I had to play the weak, broken ex-wife who just wanted to move on. I needed to sever the legal tie before I cut the rope that was holding him over the cliff. 2 weeks later, the lawyer's office, mahogany table, cold air conditioning, and the smell of expensive leather and arrogance. Marcus sat opposite me. He looked good. Tan, new suit. He checked his watch 3 times in the first 5 minutes. "Let's make this quick, Elena," he said, not meeting my eyes. "Sienna and I have a flight to Aspen tonight." My lawyer, a sharp woman named Karen, who I had briefed thoroughly, slid the papers across the table. "Elena is willing to waive spousal support," Karen said. Marcus looked up, surprised. "Really?" "On one condition," I added, my voice trembling just enough to be convincing. "I want a clean break. Today. You keep the investments in the Cayman account. You keep the business assets. I just want my name off everything. The house, the liabilities, the loans, everything." I saw the greed flash in his eyes. He thought I was being stupid. Why, he thought I was too emotional to fight for the money. He didn't know that the investments he was fighting to keep were actually evidence of embezzlement. He didn't know the business assets were toxic. "Fine," Marcus said, signing the papers with a flourish. "If that's what you want. I'm doing you a favor, really." He signed his death warrant with a Mont Blanc pen. The divorce was finalized in record time. I moved into a smaller apartment downtown, a quiet place, a sniper's nest. For the next 6 months, I became a ghost in Marcus's life. But he was the star of mine, or rather, the star of my investigation. I watched them on Instagram. It was like watching a reality show where you know the ending. They bought a penthouse in Tribeca, $5 million. Caption, "New levels, #power couple." I checked the public property records. Adjustable rate mortgage, high interest. He leveraged the fake assets to get the loan. He was drowning in debt to keep up with a woman who he thought was an heiress. And Sienna? She was playing her part perfectly. Charity galas, front row at Fashion Week. She even started a foundation for underprivileged youth. The irony was suffocating. She told the press she was the estranged daughter of the Whitmore dynasty, making her own way. The media ate it up. "The billionaire rebel," they called her. Nobody fact-checked. Why would they? She looked the part. Then came the post that changed everything. June 14th, a photo of 2 baby shoes. Designer, of course, Gucci. Caption, "Our little prince is coming, the legacy continues." Pregnant. Marcus was going to have a son. He texted me that night, the first time in 6 months. "Sienna is pregnant, finally starting a real family. Hope you're doing okay with your cats." I didn't reply. I stared at the phone. A baby. For a moment, I felt a pang of guilt. Was I going to destroy a family with a newborn? Then I remembered the zero balance in my savings account. I remembered the 8 years of lies. I remembered him calling me stagnant. And I remembered something else. Sienna's timeline didn't add up, based on her party phase posts from Miami 9 months ago. And Marcus's business trips. I did some math. Then I did some more digging into Sienna's Sarah Jenkins past. I found an ex-boyfriend in Ohio, a mechanic named Dave. I found a Venmo transaction history, and I realized the baby might be the biggest lie of all. The baby shower was scheduled for late September. It wasn't going to be a backyard BBQ, and it was a black tie event at the Plaza Hotel. The event of the season. Marcus wanted to show off. He wanted to parade his trophy wife and his heir to the world. I wasn't invited, obviously, but when you know the caterer's schedule, the event planner's email, which I hacked using Marcus's old recovery questions, his mother's maiden name hasn't changed, Marcus, and the guest list. You don't need an invitation. I spent the weeks leading up to the party preparing my gifts. Item number 1, a thick envelope addressed to the Internal Revenue Service, Criminal Investigation Division, containing 5 years of cooked books, wire transfers to shell companies, and proof that Marcus had been embezzling from his own clients to fund his Whitmore lifestyle. I mailed that one 3 days before the party. It would arrive on Monday morning. Item number 2, a presentation. I contacted the AV guy hired for the event, a nice kid named Kevin. I told him I was Sienna's sister from Ohio, planning a surprise slideshow for the happy couple. I Venmo'd him $500. He gave me the access code to the projector system. The day of the party, I dressed up. Not in my old, boring accountant clothes. I wore a black dress. Sharp, sleek, deadly. I wasn't going to the party to drink champagne. I was going to watch. I parked my car across the street from the plaza. I opened my laptop, connected to the hotel Wi-Fi. I had a live feed of the ballroom thanks to a nanny cam hidden in the massive floral arrangement I had sent anonymously earlier that day. I watched Marcus working the room. He looked manic, sweaty. He was laughing too loud. The cracks were showing. The mortgage payments were probably due. He needed this alliance with the Whitmore family to pay off. Sienna sat on a throne-like chair, rubbing her belly, accepting gifts worth more than my annual salary. She looked terrified. She knew. She knew the walls were closing in. She knew she wasn't a Whitmore. She knew the money was running out, but they were both committed to the lie. I took a sip of my coffee in the dark car. "Showtime," I whispered. I pressed enter. Inside the ballroom, the lights dimmed. The crowd of 200 Manhattan elites quieted down. Marcus stood center stage, holding a microphone, beaming like he had just won an Oscar. And now, he announced, a special look at the journey of our love, prepared by Sienna's wonderful sister. Sienna looked confused. She didn't have a sister. But before she could say a word, the massive projection screen behind them flickered to life. I sat in my car, my finger hovering over the enter key. "Happy anniversary, Marcus," I whispered. Click. The first image wasn't a baby ultrasound. It was a screenshot of a driver's license. Sarah Jenkins. Address, Trailer Park Avenue, Dayton, Ohio. The crowd gasped. A low murmur rippled through the room like a wave. Marcus turned around, his smile faltering. "What? What is this?" Then came the next slide. Marty's side-by-side comparison. On the left, Sienna Whitmore in couture. On the right, Sarah Jenkins working at a diner 3 years ago. Then, the financial records, not hers, his. I projected the bank statements I had uncovered. The ones showing the investments were actually payments to shell companies owned by Sarah Jenkins. She had been siphoning his money long before I left him. Marcus stared at the screen. The color drained from his face. He looked at Sienna. "You?" he stammered, the microphone picking up his trembling voice. "You said your trust fund was frozen? You said you needed a loan?" Sienna backed away, knocking over a tower of champagne glasses. Crash, but I wasn't done. The final slide, the pièce de résistance, a paternity test result, or rather, the lack of one, alongside a time-stamped photo of Sienna. Sorry. And Sarah, in Ohio, 2 weeks after she supposedly conceived with Marcus in New York. And next to her, a man, Dave, the mechanic. Caption on the screen: Father of the Year? The room erupted. It wasn't just embarrassment, it was social execution. The Whitmore mask was ripped off. The perfect pregnancy was exposed as a trap. Marcus stood there, stripped naked in front of the people he desperately wanted to impress. He looked small. He looked pathetic. But the show wasn't over, because at that exact moment, the double doors at the back of the ballroom swung open. They didn't wear tuxedos. They wore navy blue windbreakers with yellow lettering. IRS, Criminal Investigation. They didn't run. Federal agents never run. They walked with the terrifying calmness of people who have already built their case. They walked right past the stunned guests, right past the shattered champagne flutes, straight to the stage. I watched on my screen as 2 agents approached Marcus. He tried to pull away. "This is a mistake. Do you know who I am?" "Yes, Mr. Marcus Sterling," the lead agent said, loud enough for the camera to pick up. "You are under arrest for tax evasion, wire fraud, and embezzlement." They cuffed him, right there, in front of his boss, in front of his clients, in front of the woman who had conned him while he was conning me. Sienna tried to slip away through the kitchen exit. 2 officers were waiting for her. Fraud is a crime too, especially when you use a fake identity to secure bank loans. I closed my laptop. The screen went black. The show was over. I didn't feel giddy. I didn't laugh maniacally. I just felt light. The weight of 8 years of lies. The weight of being not enough. The weight of his betrayal. It was all gone. I started my car. The engine purred. I drove away from the Plaza Hotel, leaving the sirens behind me. 6 months later, I'm sitting on the balcony of my new apartment. It's not a penthouse, but it's mine, paid for with my own money, earned from my new forensic accounting firm. Business is booming. It turns out a lot of wealthy women want to know where their husbands are hiding the money. I'm the best in the city. Marcus is currently serving a 5-year sentence in a minimum security facility upstate. He writes to me sometimes, letters begging for forgiveness, letters asking if I can help him fix his finances when he gets out. I burn them, unopened. Sienna, or Sarah, pleaded guilty to identity fraud. She's back in Ohio now, living with her parents. The baby was born. It was a boy. And yes, he has Dave the mechanic's eyes. I took back my maiden name. I took back my life. People ask me if I feel bad. They ask if it was too harsh. He just cheated, they say. Did he deserve to lose everything? I take a sip of my wine. It's a vintage red, smooth, complex. Did he deserve it? He stole my past to buy a future that didn't exist. He broke a vow. He broke the law. I didn't destroy Marcus. I just handed him the bill. And like a good accountant, I made sure he paid every single cent. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. But I think they're wrong. Revenge isn't a dish. It's a mirror. I just held it up and let them see who they really were. My name is Elena. I am 35 years old, and I have never been happier.